That's a good answer to that. That's very interesting. Great. Well, that's that little section. Now we've got another one here. Linda Ray she's in Australia as well. Is the equitable lien part of the process in gemstone? Is that what is meant by your comments on videos about claiming equity from the Sesta KB Trust, or is that nothing to do with it? She's just trying to connect some dots.
Yeah. Very good question, and I'm going to pull it apart in its component parts as I do, and move it into a more precise analysis of the language. She uses two words together: equitable lien. That's an oxymoron. There is no lien involved in equity. There's equitable interest or beneficial interest, equitable rights, or you can use those interchangeably, that we claim and hold by the perfecting of our standing and our status. But it's not a lien. Lien is a commercial term. That's why the term was used going back to the 1770s, 80s period of unalienable rights. To alien something means to apply a lien, which means to bond it in a commercial way. So this is where the misdirect or the misconstruction in people thinking who studied and think commerce or commercial liens or commercial process is the way to go. That was the error in our ways. We do not want to do a lien because the only place you can do a lien is in commerce. And so when we talk about people who do secured party process, that's using the Uniform Commercial Code, and there's something called a UCC1 financing statement. And there are two or more parties, but two categories: the secured parties and the debtors. The secured party has a commercial lien against the debtor and the collateral that's specified. The problem is everything on that side of the line is fictional in nature because it's in commerce. So we do not want to have a lien. We want to be solvent, where we are not alienable, therefore we are unalienable, and our rights are unalienable, and our law and our land and our estate are unalienable. That's what was meant by unalienable rights and related. It meant it could not be liened. When we have standing and we have that inherent substantive position of unalienable rights, then we stand in equity because we are the superior title holder, because equity is in co-relationship to legal title, which is the trustee. There's either the liability or the equity. The trustee holds liability, the beneficiary holds the equity. We do not have to lien something to have that equitable position as beneficiary. So that's one point on it. So she was mentioning in one of my videos claiming equity from the Sesta KV Trust. So let's define that. Sesta KV goes back to the Sesta KV Act and the definition of what a Sesta KV is. The word Sesta KV means the living beneficiary. An estate holds property, and it must have, on the private side, in the substantive side, it must have a living beneficiary. There is always someone holding the beneficial interest, which would be the Sesta KV. It's not a trust. Sesta KV Trust is also not a correct phrasing. There is a phrase called a Sesta K Trust, which is the flip side, the mirror image that was used to hold us in the commercial realm. Sesta K Trust also means beneficiary, but a Sesta K Trust has a limited beneficial use of something in which the title is held by another. That's the military usufruct. Because they created the franchises as Sesta K Trusts, we step in both as the bonded surety, as trustee, to carry and have to perform on the liability, but we do not have the superior title. When you flip that around and you become the living beneficiary, you are this heir and the living beneficiary or the Sesta KV, and you have the superior standing in that position. And hence you hold the equity that you claim. You have to go through the steps of what we do in the status correction in order to have standing to claim that equity.
Cool. Listen, I'm just going to jump in right now just to let people know that are listening on the browser. The Blog Talk browser will shut down in the next couple of minutes, but we do have up to an hour more to continue, and any conversation that takes place from here on will be on the recording, and anyone that's already called into the studio will be able to hear the rest of the thing. Most of them know that. But just for anyone that's listening, we will be cutting off in a moment. So thanks for listening, anyone that's not just going to be able to stay with us, and we'll keep going as long as Ken's got the strength for it. But the recording will be available anytime after, let's say, 8:30 Eastern time, because that's when the show will certainly have to be finished. So with that, thanks for listening, and we'll continue on. If you need to finish that part of the Sesta K, please go on. Otherwise, we'll go ahead.
Okay. Well, to tie that back in, I referenced the Sesta K V Act, and that was passed in 1666. And the year before, they burned London down, and they started rebuilding the city of London. And, of course, they like numbers, and they like the number 666. So 1666 is where they have a demarcation or a bifurcation of the system where they're going to start really putting this into play over the next 300 years. Because exactly 300 years later, they perfected the Uniform Commercial Code, and what I mentioned earlier, that Federal Registration Act of Liens, Federal Lien Registration Act, established that all monetary and all taxation issues are under the purview of the UCC. So there's never an accident in their timing. They use the calendar and the whole construct of the multidimensional clock of time and space and planets and all these things. It's part of the prison system. So that's why they're so locked into numerology and numbers. So there is a correspondence to 1666. 1966. And so they start with the Sesta KV Act, which starts out saying that we have Sesta KVs, we being the royal we, have Sesta KVs, which means the living beneficiaries holding the estates that we have passed to our landed aristocracy by sovereign grant of land. And those Sesta KVs, meaning men, the heirs, the living heirs, have gone to sea. They've been lost. They have not returned, so there's a presumption of death. They had no way to pass on the estate because when a Sesta KV dies, then the new living beneficiary becomes the living beneficiary. So the act was, for practical reasons, to be able to settle or pass on the estates. Additionally, and of course, where did they go? They went to sea. They were lost at sea. That's why we use the phrase lost at sea. We return from being lost at sea, and what is that sea? It's the sea of commerce. So we are Sesta KVs because we have a substantive right to claim the underlying ancestral estate. And you mentioned Kurt Kallenbach's work, which has been an extraordinary piece in bringing forward the whole thing, how they do that with the DNA and the birth and the afterbirth and all of that. Very key, important part, which we have integrated as well. And so it's a matter of being lost at sea and returning and getting back onto the land. And so whether you're physically walking on the land, you are still presumed to be lost at sea because you've bound yourself to the sea of commerce. So that's what we want to be as the Sesta KV. We don't want to be the Sesta K Trust because that's the limited beneficial use of a trust franchise. So it's kind of a mirroring of Sesta KV as a living beneficiary, Sesta K Trust as a civilly dead limited beneficial use, and basically being what's called a decedent estate, which means you're dying. You're dying because they're extracting the life force out of you every minute of every day by your consent and your voluntary position to be the surety. So in the SSKV Act, in the fourth section, it provides for what happens when a man returns from being lost at sea, who proves he is the living man, who claims the estate. All that was created, the profit and proceed off of that estate, now reverts back to him, which we have incorporated in our process, how to claim it, how to do that within the parameters of the current system, and how to become basically the living beneficiary.
Right. Wow. Oh no, we haven't lost you, have we? The phone's on the... Oh, it's okay. I thought we'd just lost you then. You know, we had Kurt on a while back, and his phone's got a habit of cutting off after 2 hours. After an hour, actually. It cut off once, and it cut off the second time, and then he couldn't get back on for the last hour. So I was afraid that might have happened to your phone. It suddenly went, and it went beep, beep. So anyway, you're still there, so that's great. Was there a last bit to finish with there? Sorry.
Say that again?
Has you finished
I was
with?
done.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
yep,
cool.
Yep.
So we will continue on. That's really that whole CSKB is fascinating, and the more I read about it, the more sort of like the pieces start to come together too. So yeah, it's really interesting about the numbers and all of that. So the next question is actually, I think we've covered. There was a question from Sarah saying property taxation, how to kill the presumption that one is liable to pay them. Well, we just talked about that before we got into Linda's question there, and also I had asked, is one still subject to land taxes after status correction? No.
Because there is no land tax. There's property tax, which is in the level that we talked about earlier in the real estate or the rural estate. And, of course, we don't want to kill anything, presumptions or otherwise. We don't kill the presumption, but we correct the presumption. And we turn it around, as we do with everything else. We turn the liability to the trustee and make them take care of the taxes. So we are in the process of perfecting that in ways that are part of the process in terms of applying our status to appointing trustees, including the tax assessor in the county.
Right. Okay, cool. That's definitely will become more clear as we go on through everything. It's we've kind of discussed all the way through, and definitely we can only get to so much of this. It's just this thing has been, like you said, you've been doing this for 25 plus years and 50 years altogether with everything. But we're getting through a fair bit here in just like a couple of hours so far. Just let me know when you're kind of you've done enough, because we can stop up any time. But as long as you're happy to go, we'll keep going down this list of questions. Here's a couple of questions I actually brought up from having read through all the questions that we've got through so far. Money. What are Pantera's suggestions, ideas about money, and how can we start using lawful money? How does that fit in?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yes, mighty.
Hang on, I am getting a drink out of the fridge, some liquid
sure,
refreshment.
Yeah, absolutely.
A stimulating beverage.
Yes, you need some of that at this point. We can take a break too if you'd like to.
Well, let me put you on hold for 30 seconds so you don't hear me guzzling my beverage.
All right. Thanks so much. Yeah, this has been awesome, and thanks for everybody that's still sitting in there on the board for hanging with us. And it's really great to be getting all these questions answered. It's absolutely fabulous. So we'll just keep going as long as Ken's got the strength for it. So, okay. Here we go.
Well, it's also a multidimensional answer, which you've probably grown to expect, I should hope.
Yes, absolutely.
Money is, in its primary expression, is a form of lunacy. Do you know why I say that?
Yeah, well, I can't answer it fully, but I have come across this this part of it before, to do with the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
we often call it moon eye.
Yeah, or MON is just another name of the moon goddess, the Luna goddess. That's why we have Monday, which is Moon Day. And so it's lunacy. It is, in fact, a complete illusion, ultimately.
Yes.
And, of course, many people will say, yeah, but I can still pull it out of my pocket and buy a quart of milk or whatever I want. Well, that's true. So we won't get into all that rarefied philosophical discussions, but it really is, it is a construct that is put together and held together by our consensus mass hallucination that says that we must pursue it in order to, quote unquote, earn a living. Now, of course, some people might say, oh, now he's going to get communistic on us. Everybody should be given a free ride. No, what we need to do is move ourselves back to the understanding of who we are as being one and equal with creation itself, and that we created this world. We created the substance and the abundance here. And money is just an illusion to rearrange, which we have all basically consented to rearrange the structure into a system that means some get a lot of it and become the elite and get to pay the priest to have the rituals for the Book of the Dead so they could rise in the hierarchy of heaven and become the elite in heaven. Mm-hmm. And most do not. And, we've got billions of people for lack of money, who are starving and living in horrid conditions and, destroying life. It's basically the collective mass hallucination that says that those who have money are worthy and those who aren't are not worthy of life.
Right.
That truly fundamentally has to be changed.
Yep.
And what is the basic construct of that? Debt, obviously. So the only way to make money or create money is to create it as debt. And the only way you can create monetized debt is if you have a debtor and a debt servicer. Somebody has to pay the debt to create the interest, create the hierarchy of the structure that is basically a wealth extraction system. And that's my ideas about money, and we do teach a lot of things about money inside Gemstone. As to suggestions and how can we start using lawful money, well, that's also an interesting concept as well, because what's lawful money? According to the Constitution of the United States or U.S. Constitution, whichever side you're looking at it, lawful money is specie. Specie means something that is the equivalent no matter who has it. If I have an ounce of silver, you have an ounce of silver, it's specie, because if I deposit it somewhere at a bank and come back a week later and they give me an ounce of silver, doesn't matter if it was the same ounce that I gave them. It's a specie, it's like kind, and it's equal. So lawful money, constitutionally speaking, is gold and silver. But if you read, for example, Franco Collins' work, somebody asked earlier about Eucadia, who's been a tremendous source for me, incredible source of understanding and knowledge about the history and lots of things, that, he goes extensively into the misdirection of the so-called precious metal gold standard and like that. First of all, if you have a single precious metal as a standard, it can be greatly manipulated if you've got paper around it, which is how they did what they did in the last several hundred years. A bimetal standard where gold and silver are at fixed ratio, the way it was done in this country in the beginning, that's a much more stable structure, stable place of value. But also, when you have 7 billion people on the planet, is there enough gold and silver to have everybody have lawful money where it would be a stable system? No. Not even close. Unless we just raped and pillaged the whole planet for every ounce of gold and silver we could find. Of course, according to the cache technology, supposedly the plasma technology is going to be able to manifest it. So that remains to be seen. So, I'm just standing by on that one. But going back to a gold standard now would give a stabilizing grounding point to shift out of the complete insanity of the current system and stabilize a monetary basis. But to me, at the same time right now, we're moving into uncharted territory where we can create whatever we want as a medium of exchange with blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and other forms of currency that if the people control it and it's not controlled by the cabal and the elitist bankers, we don't need it to be grounded in any, point of value reference like specie money, lawful money. But that's a matter of consciousness. That's not a matter of practical reality. We have to break the programming of the consciousness that currently exists around money. It's this huge system. It's a programmed system, which is why it's a lunacy. And very few people understand it, and it's going to take decades before that programming breaks down. And I hope we can do it in decades. I don't know. But for me, my passion and motivation in creating Pantera and Gemstone was to create a multi-generational legacy that we would build these educational and media mechanisms to start influencing and educating more and more people and pass it on to the next several generations. Because if we don't preserve the knowledge that we've gained and have the means to pass it on to educate the next couple of generations, then this reality is really going to implode on itself. But I'm an optimist, and I believe we are going to do that. We are doing it now. And so we have to educate more and more people and have the ripple effect, the 100th monkey effect ripple out so that this concept of what money is expanded so people start understanding it as simply a medium of exchange and value denomination where to me, the ultimate expression of money is what's called a parity system, which means value and measure are on par one-to-one with each other. There's no reason why it can't be done. If I have something that's of value and I can put a measure on that, call it 100 units, whatever those units are, and we all agree, that's 100 unit type of value, and we create monetary issue that is on par with reflecting that value. It's only a matter of what do we value. If we create value based on life, on creation of every living human being, then in every animal and plant, then we have an ever-expanding value base and monetary base that reflects it to where eventually everybody in the world can have a sustainable and balanced life. Right now, the control is that what is valued is very limited, and its value is put out in the form of debt. So only those franchised participants who can be debt servicers can participate in it.